The Shathrun drifted above the burning colony, like a bored predator swatting at prey that no longer entertained it. Commander Valrix stood at the center of the bridge, arms folded behind his back, mandibles tilted in mild irritation as another human habitation dome collapsed under orbital fire. The sight didn't thrill him anymore, it barely registered. Humans, in his view, had exhausted their usefulness as a distraction centuries ago. Colonial resistance neutralized, an officer reported, voice full of the smug self-assurance common among the Varkal. Survivor clusters attempting evacuation. Permission to vaporize. Valrix didn't bother looking at the screen. Only if their screaming disrupts navigation. The bridge crew chuckled. To them, the extinction of a settlement was measured not in moral weight, but in how quickly they could log it and move on. Valrix's gaze finally drifted toward the viewport as a handful of transport shuttles attempted a desperate escape. They arced upward through ash-filled clouds, engines overheating, shields flickering. Brave but pointless. Mark the larger shuttle, Valrix said, sighing theatrically. They appear to be trying. A single pulse cannon fired. White light consumed the shuttle. The bridge laughed again. Valrix didn't. He wasn't cruel. Cruelty, in his mind, implied emotional investment. He simply felt nothing. Humanity had never earned anything more. One officer glanced at a data slate. Our long-range scanners corroborate previous assessments, Commander. The human homeworld still lacks any formal defense fleet. Satellite grid is outdated and mostly civilian. Still. Valrix leaned forward, finally interested. They protect their colonies, yet leave their birthplace undefended? How sentimental. How human. He didn't believe the naive explanation his own intel division proposed. He rarely believed anything presented without challenge, but the opportunity was irresistible. If Earth truly was the fragile, complacent cradle they had always assumed, then claiming it would grant the Dominion a symbolic victory and give Valrix something resembling stimulation. Prepare a strike fleet, he said. Earth will be our next demonstration. I expect it to be brief. The crew saluted. The Shathrun turned, engines flaring, leaving the ruined colony behind without a second glance. Hours later, the strike fleet emerged from slipstream space at the edge of Earth's orbit. The blue planet floated serenely, unaware or unaligned. No fleet, no defense drones, no challenge. The officers murmured in amusement. Commander, human transmissions detected. Civilian traffic. Emergency responders. Nothing military. Valrix leaned one elbow against his command chair, feigning disappointment. Tragic. They don't even struggle. He ordered a demonstration volley. A trio of plasma spears streaked across void and struck the moon's surface, kicking up vast plumes of silver dust. Human communications spiked momentarily, then went silent. Too silent. The sensor's officer frowned, tapping his display. Commander, something's changed. All human channels shifted into synchronized encryption. Global unified frequency. Execution speed beyond known human capacity. Global. Valrix repeated. Impossible. Their nations barely coordinate farm shipments. Before further analysis could begin, a calm human voice cut through their comm systems, overriding Varkal encryption with surgical precision. Unidentified vessels, the voice said, smooth and emotionless. You have violated Earth proximity boundaries. Disengage immediately. The bridge erupted in laughter. Valrix smirked. Humans attempting diplomacy before annihilation. How charming. Inform them their planet's oceans will boil if they continue this charade. A brief pause followed. Then the same human voice returned, colder now, as though protocol had shifted. Apex authorization confirmed. Stand by. What does that mean? An officer asked. Valrix waved a hand dismissively. It means they've run out of bluff. But as he spoke, the planet below darkened, not from fear or destruction, but from power grids activating across continents in perfect unison. Night swept across Earth in a synchronized grid, not natural, not accidental. Intentional. Sensors began chiming. Dozens of signatures appeared inside the Varkal formation. Inside, not approaching. Telemetry systems scrambled to interpret the impossible. Officers shouted updates, none of them making sense. Multiple vessels detected at zero approach vector. They're reading as human, but no known configuration. Commander, something is materializing directly between our dreadnoughts. Light fractured. Space folded. And from nothingness, a singular warship emerged. A vessel of obsidian alloy and braided light. No identifiable hull seams, no conventional architecture. Its presence bent local gravity just by existing. It dwarfed every ship in the Varkal fleet, not by size, but by the sheer wrongness of its engineering. A voice emanated from a ship, filling every console, every corner of the bridge. Apex Warship Leviathan. Operational. Hostile activity confirmed. All amusement vanished from the shaft ruin. Valrix clenched his mandibles, staring at the Leviathan with something he had not felt in decades: uncertainty. The ship made no aggressive move. It simply hovered, studying them, judging them. "Scan it," Valrix ordered. "We can't," the sensors officer whispered. "It isn't reflecting data. It's absorbing it." Before Valrix could respond, streaks of light erupted from the Leviathan. Not explosions, precision pulses. 3 Varkal cruisers went dark simultaneously, every weapon, engine, and shield system severed with surgical accuracy. No casualties. No destruction. Only neutralization. "Commander," another officer said with a trembling voice, "they spared the ships." Valrix felt something cold trickle through him. Not fear. Not yet. But the suspicion of it. A human transmission followed, clinical and confident. Outer colonies were designated decoy zones. Losses acceptable within strategic projection models. You have engaged protected territory. Apex protocol is active. Valrix swallowed hard. Humanity, weak, sentimental, fractious humanity, had been waiting. Not reacting. Waiting. The Leviathan shifted, aligning its bow with the shaft rune. Valrix felt the weight of its silence settle across the fleet like a judgment already made. For the first time in his long military life, Valrix realized he might have gravely miscalculated. And as the Leviathan's hull shimmered with unspent power, he understood something far more unsettling. Humanity had never been prey. They had simply never been provoked properly. The bridge fell silent as the Leviathan's engines began to glow, preparing for something. Something Valrix suddenly wasn't sure he wanted to witness. And yet he couldn't look away. The Leviathan vanished so abruptly that several Varkal officers thought they had experienced a collective hallucination. One moment it dominated every sensor, a mountain of impossible engineering. The next, it folded out of reality with casual elegance, leaving the shaft rune surrounded by its own panicked telemetry. Commander Valrix stared at the empty space where the human warship had been. The hollowness it left behind felt intentional, almost mocking. He had commanded fleets that razed continents, shattered moons, and extinguished resistance movements, but he had never felt irrelevant until now. "Trace its jump signature," he ordered quietly. "We can't," the sensors officer whispered. "Its exit vector contradicts physical law." Valrix exhaled, a slow, controlled release meant to steady his racing thoughts. He would not let the crew see fear. Dominion commanders did not fear. Dominion commanders adapted, calculated, and survived. Still, his gaze drifted to the tactical screen where the Leviathan's last position glowed like a wound. "Prepare another volley," he said. "If it returns, we'll drown it in fire." As if mocking him, alarms flashed briefly, innocuously. Then half the fleet lost propulsion. Cruisers drifted helplessly, as if swatted by an unseen hand. The shaft rune itself groaned, engines throttling down despite every manual override. A voice rolled through the comms again, the calm, clipped tone of an officer who had already accepted victory. "Hostile maneuvers detected. Countermeasures deployed." Admiral Reza Solano's voice didn't shout, didn't threaten. It simply stated facts, and that terrified Valrix far more than any taunt. "Identify yourself," Valrix snarled. "Admiral Solano," the human replied. "Acting commander of Apex Protocol." Valrix straightened, gripping the arms of his command chair. "You dare disable a Dominion strike fleet and call it protocol? You are outnumbered, human." The Leviathan reappeared behind them, silent and lightless, its silhouette framed against Earth's edge. As if it had been sitting there all along, simply waiting for them to turn around. "Outnumbered is irrelevant," Solano said. "Trajectory analysis indicates you will understand that soon." The humans didn't fire. Instead, hundreds of micro-wormhole signatures pulsed around the Varkal fleet like fireflies made of war. Drones slipped in and out of existence, each movement calculated, precise, surgical. Within seconds, every Dominion weapon system was marked, every vulnerability mapped in real time. Solano spoke again. "We will not escalate unless required. Do not require it." The shaft rune fell quiet. For the first time, the Varkle Bridge crew looked unsure of themselves. Valrix knew he needed answers humans had hidden for decades. So he retreated to his private chamber, sealing the door behind him. His claws tapped the console, pulling up centuries of human conflict. He watched in silence. Footage of trench warfare, soldiers trudging through mud and poison clouds. He watched empires rise and collapse in fire. He saw orbital strikes leveling cities. He saw resistance groups fighting in shattered landscapes with nothing but desperation and makeshift weapons. He watched nuclear detonations bloom across old Earth skies like terrible flowers. He whispered to himself, they survived all of this. Humanity didn't just survive, they adapted, evolved, refined their brutality until it became something cold and methodical. A survival instinct sharpened by millennia of conflict. He'd always believed the humans were soft because they favored peace. Now he understood peace had been camouflage. Humans had not abandoned their capacity for war, they had stored it like a blade oiled and sheathed until the moment it was needed. A chime echoed, an incoming summons from the Dominion High Council. With reluctance, Valrix opened the channel. Dozens of counselors appeared, radiating arrogance across the hollow feed. Commander Valrix, a senior counselor intoned, we've received your exaggerated reports. Exaggerated. Valrix repeated, his pride cracking. We faced a warship capable of rewriting physics. The humans have technology far beyond our models. We cannot. We will not entertain excuses, another counselor snapped. Humans are prey species. You panic because your reputation cannot withstand a single setback. Valrix's throat tightened. He wanted to scream that this wasn't a setback, it was a revelation. But he saw their expressions, smug, self-assured, blind. They wouldn't listen. He forced himself to remain composed. You need to mobilize the Dominion defense grids. If humanity deploys more vessels like the Leviathan. If, a counselor cut in, your analysis is hypothetical. Your fear, however, is tangible. The word fear ignited the room. He felt their scorn like heat against his carapace. You misunderstand, Valrix said, lowering his voice. They are not attacking blindly. They warned us. They disabled us. They held back. And this frightens you, the counselor sneered. Yes, Valrix said without hesitation, because they chose not to kill us when they could. The council chamber erupted in jeers, accusations, insults. His credibility disintegrated under the weight of their arrogance. He ended the transmission before fury overwhelmed reason. Alone again, he stared at Earth's tactical feed. Human signatures were spreading through Dominion territory, not with force, but with eerie precision. Entire supply lines collapsed. Communications blacked out. Colonies went dark without a single reported casualty. It was a dismantling, not a war. Valrix returned to the bridge. His officers turned to him, looking for direction, reassurance, purpose. He saw the fear they tried to hide, fear he had planted with his initial confidence, then shattered by confronting the truth. Commander, an officer said, voice trembling. What are your orders? He hesitated. He had never hesitated in his life. Monitor all human movements, he said. Prepare contingency plans for retreat. Retreat, the officer echoed weakly. Yes, Valrix replied. Because I don't believe we've seen the extent of their capabilities. And I suspect they're giving us time. The one thing we should fear most. Time for what? The sensors chimed before he could answer. A new broadcast spread across Dominion space, relayed by human drones with flawless clarity. Apex protocol escalating. Non-combatant evacuation corridors will remain open for 72 hours. Valrix closed his eyes. They weren't trying to win. They were preparing to end the war entirely and mercifully. That, he realized, was the most terrifying strategy of all. The Dominion's outer colonies fell into a silence so complete it felt engineered. No explosions, no final distress calls, just systems flickering out, one by one, like candles pinched between invisible fingers. Valrix watched the collapse unfold across the tactical display, each extinguished signal tightening the pressure behind his sternum. Humanity wasn't simply advancing, they were erasing the Dominion's capacity to react. Commander, an officer whispered, supply routes Theta through Omicron are gone. No surviving traffic. They all knew what that meant. The humans hadn't bothered with conquest. They had gone straight for the arteries. Before Valrix could respond, a new anomaly rippled across the sensors, dozens of micro-wormhole distortions, each too small to fit a capital ship, yet too precise to be natural. Tiny flares of light shimmered through the darkness, swarming like bioluminescent creatures. "They're deploying again," the officer said, voice unsteady. The drones burst forth, cutting through space with silent geometry. They weren't weapons in the traditional sense, they were scalpel strokes, slicing apart Dominion infrastructure with terrifying restraint. No civilian structures were harmed. Only military networks, supply caches, and kinetic defense lines disintegrated with quiet efficiency. Valrix recognized the strategy instantly. Surgical warfare. Deprive the enemy of mobility, information, and coordination until all that remains is a slow collapse. Humans had mastered it in their own wars long before the Dominion had even achieved interstellar travel. His mandibles tightened. "Prepare countermeasures. We intercept the next." Another alarm shrieked. A massive wormhole tore open above the battlefield, a swirling fracture in spacetime that illuminated every hull with violent blue light. The Leviathan surged through. Not gliding, not drifting, hunting. Its engines radiated controlled fury, its hull refracting wavelengths Varkal scanners couldn't classify. The ship moved like a living organism, fluid, predatory, decisive. And behind it, streaming from the wormhole in regimented formations, arrived the rest of the human fleet. Hundreds of vessels, each built with the same uncompromising logic, no ornamentation, no weakness, no hesitation. The Dominion had never seen a species coordinate a multi-point arrival with such immaculate precision. The Shafroon's bridge fell silent as the fleet encircled them. Many officers lowered their eyes. Others clenched their fists in despair. Valrix alone kept watching, forcing himself to absorb every detail of humanity's awakening. Admiral Solano's voice emerged once more, unyielding as polished steel. "Dominion forces, you are surrounded. We will disable you non-lethally unless you escalate." The phrase non-lethally chilled Valrix more than any threat. Humanity's restraint was a blade with no handle. No matter how carefully it was offered, it promised consequences. "Commander," an officer said quietly, "orders." Valrix's mouth opened, but before any command formed, the Dominion armada surged forward in blind instinct. Fear, pride, and desperation fused into a catastrophic reflex. Thousands of plasma batteries lit the darkness, streaking toward the human fleet like a final curse. The Leviathan reacted before Valrix could breathe. Its prow glowed with a blooming sphere of luminous distortions, an expanding gravitational curtain. Every Dominion projectile bent, twisted, or dissolved upon contact. The volley evaporated without so much as scorching the Leviathan's armor. Then the humans answered, not with destruction, with precision. The Leviathan fired a single pulse that fragmented into 1,000 microscopic projectiles, each one steering itself toward a distinct target. Weapon cores, propulsion engines, sensor relays, never crew compartments. The Dominion fleet wilted in seconds, collapsing into a drift of powerless ships suspended in the void like metallic ghosts. Valrix's dreadnought shuddered as its engines died. The lights dimmed. Gravity fluctuated. Consoles flickered. One by one, every system surrendered. The Shafroon was dead in the water. Breathing heavily, Valrix gripped the edge of his chair. Around him, officers trembled, some in fear, others in awe. For the first time in his military life, he felt the fragile weight of his authority. He had no plan. No tactical brilliance could reverse what had unfolded. The comm channel opened. Admiral Solano didn't gloat. He didn't mock. His tone remained steady, professional, almost weary. "Commander Valrix," he said, "you are ordered to stand down. This conflict is concluded at your discretion or ours. I recommend the former." Valrix forced himself to speak. "You could have ended us 1,000 times over. Why haven't you?" A small pause. The kind that implied thought, not hesitation. "Because annihilation isn't strategy," Solano replied. "Stability is." The words hit Valrix harder than any weapon discharge. Humanity hadn't awakened out of vengeance. They had awakened with purpose. His crew watched him, waiting for defiance or surrender. He saw fear in their eyes, but also the faintest glimmer of hope. Hope for survival, if not victory. He straightened slowly. "What happens now?" "As you refuse to retreat," Solano answered, "we proceed." The Leviathan turned toward the Dominion heart worlds, its engines igniting with starfire intensity. The human fleet followed, formation shifting like an inexorable tide. Valrix's monitors displayed the first wave of Dominion defenses bracing for impact, unaware, unprepared, and tragically outmatched. The Shathrun floated powerless in their wake as the humans advanced, not to conquer, but to unmake the war itself. And for the first time since the conflict began, Valrix understood that survival would depend not on strength, but on humility, something the Dominion had long forgotten how to use. The Dominion capital burned without fire. Its skies were clear, its cities untouched, yet every citizen felt the weight of collapse pressing against the air itself. Power grids flickered in confusion. Military networks lay gutted. Command towers sat paralyzed, unable to issue orders. The end had not arrived in explosions, but in silence, a silence crafted with terrifying intentionality. From orbit, the Leviathan hovered above the capital world with the quiet dominance of a celestial judge. Human ships formed a vast perimeter around it, each vessel holding position with unwavering precision. Not a shot had been fired toward the surface. Not a single strike scarred the world. And yet everyone knew the Dominion was finished. Aboard the Shathrun, now tugged helplessly into a controlled drift near the human formation, Valrix stood alone in his private chamber. The dim lights cast long shadows across his armor. He could still feel the dreadnought vibrating with the aftershocks of its forced shutdown, like a great creature struggling to breathe. He replayed Admiral Solano's final transmission, hearing it for the 7th time. "Stand down, Commander. There is no tactical value in your extinction." Extinction. The humans spoke of it with clinical detachment, not threat. They weren't promising destruction, they were acknowledging the possibility and dismissing it as unnecessary. That, more than anything, hollowed Valrix from within. He straightened as a notification chimed. A boarding party approached. Human signatures. Controlled, measured, unhurried. They didn't storm ships. They walked onto them as if stepping into an administrative office. Moments later, the Shathrun's doors opened, and Admiral Solano entered. He wore no oppressive armor, no ceremonial insignia. Just a dark uniform that looked battered from years of service, yet impeccably maintained. His presence was calm, unthreatening, yet Valrix felt as if a gravitational field had entered the room. "Commander," Solano greeted. Valrix studied him. "You dismantled an empire without firing a shot at its heart." Solano's gaze softened. "We dismantled systems built on predation. The people will remain intact." "Magnanimous," Valrix said bitterly. "Or condescending?" "Neither," Solano replied. "Efficient." Valrix's mandibles tightened. "What do you want from us? Slavery? Tribute? Obedience?" "None," Solano said. "We want stability. The war is over. Your people need governance, infrastructure, and representation, things your High Council is no longer capable of providing." Valrix felt a spark of anger. Representation under human oversight is not representation. It is control. Solano met his eyes without flinching, then defined the alternative. Collapse? Civil war? Famine? Your empire has no leadership left. The truth stung. The High Council had either fled or been detained by human teams. Dominion fleets had fractured. Worlds were already rioting or surrendering in waves. Solano continued, "We are offering you something neither of our species has used wisely in the past, coexistence enforced not by fear, but by accountability." Valrix paced, claws tapping against metal. "Why me?" "Because your people will listen to you," Solano said. "And because you know the cost of arrogance now." The words hit Valrix like a physical strike. He halted mid-step. "What are you offering exactly?" he asked cautiously. "A governorship," Solano replied. "You will oversee the Varkal territories during reconstruction, with full autonomy over internal affairs, but with human advisors ensuring no future predatory expansions." Valrix stared at him, incredulous. "You would hand power back to the enemy you just defeated." "Defeated," Solano repeated quietly. "But not destroyed. Those are different outcomes, Commander." For a long moment, Valrix said nothing. He was trying to locate the trap, the hidden cruelty, the inevitable humiliation. But there was none. The humans were not merciful out of softness, they were merciful out of discipline. Mercy itself was a weapon, wielded with unnerving mastery. He felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest, not gratitude, not fear, but a strange, reluctant respect. "I accept," Valrix said finally. Solano nodded once, as if the decision had already been anticipated. "Then the first step begins now." They left the Shathrun together aboard a small, human transport vessel. As they descended toward the Dominion capital, Valrix stared through the viewport. Human ships patrolled like guardian beasts, silent and vigilant. The Leviathan remained motionless above the world, an unblinking sentinel. "What will become of your warship?" Valrix asked quietly. Solano followed his gaze. "The Leviathan will stay until peace stabilizes." "And after that?" Solano's voice lowered, becoming something almost philosophical. "Then it will go where humanity needs it next. We were awakened by this war. There is no returning to what we were before." Valrix sensed the weight behind those words, not triumph, not bloodlust, but a sober understanding of power's burden. As the ship broke through the atmosphere, Dominion citizens emerged onto rooftops, staring upward. Some trembled. Others watched with hollow resignation. But none were being trampled or brutalized. Human ground teams moved through the streets offering medical aid, calming unrest, restoring power. Soldiers carried tools instead of rifles. Reconstruction, not occupation. Valrix whispered, almost to himself, "You never wanted to rule us." "No," Solano said. "We wanted to survive you. Then we wanted to prevent this from happening again." Their craft landed before the ruined council hall, its once imposing spires now flickering with emergency lighting. Valrix felt the ghosts of every decision that led to this moment pressing against him. He stepped onto the platform. Human soldiers saluted Solano, then Valrix. The gesture stunned him. Solano spoke softly. "This is not humiliation. It's a beginning." Valrix nodded slowly, accepting the mantle he had never expected, and certainly never wanted. A low hum filled the air. The Leviathan shifted in orbit, its hull shimmering with distant starlight, as if acknowledging the transition. Valrix looked up at it and felt a rare, visceral shiver. "Admiral," he murmured, "what will you do if the galaxy resists your new order?" Solano's answer was calm, resolute, and chilling in its certainty. "Then we will remind them why the Leviathan woke." Lightning cracked across the distant horizon, as if punctuating his words. And Valrix understood. The galaxy had not simply changed rulers. It had changed eras,